You're listening to the Murphology podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Murphology podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Today, meet an extremely inspiring person, Jeremy Raeszler. Jeremy had a motocross accident back in 2008 that left him with a spinal injury and paralyzed from the waist down. He was now a paraplegic and told he would never walk again, and that was a pretty hard pill for Jeremy to swallow. Time passed, and somehow the idea of riding a bicycle got into his head, and he was determined to figure out how he could learn to ride. You'll hear from Jeremy himself, how he accomplished what seemed to be an impossible goal. In less than a year, he went from an indoor trainer to pedaling in a grueling gravel race called Rebecca's Private Idaho. So here's my interview with Jeremy. All right, well, a super warm welcome to Jeremy. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Did you notice I didn't even try to tackle your last name? I think either on Strava or somewhere you're like, it's like raspberry. And so that's what I say in my head when I see your last name. But how do you say it?
It's Raeszler.
Raeszler.
Yeah, Raeszler, how you pronounce it. I had some friends, I don't know, it's been 20 years ago. His wife used to start joking with me, calling me Razzleberry, and it just kind of stuck. So
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast, and anybody who's listening to this episode who, looked at the title knows that you are a para-cyclist, which is a pretty unique term because I think it can mean a lot of things for different people. So I appreciate that you're going to come on and tell all of us a little bit about what being a para-cyclist is.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And before we get started with that, will you tell the listeners where you live and if you have a cycling culture there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I currently live in a little agricultural town in the mountains of southern Utah. A lot of people know where St. George, Utah is, and we're about an hour and a half northeast of St. George, Utah. Mm-hmm. A little town, about 5,000 people.
Oh, wow.
We got one grocery store, one four-way stop in the middle of town, and a whole bunch of cows. The name of the town is Panguitch, Utah, and we're in Garfield County. And Garfield County is known for all of the national parks that we have. We have Red Canyon. We have Bryce Canyon National Park. We have the Grand Staircase, Escalante. We're at about 6,600 feet right here where I live, and it only goes up from here in all four directions out of town.
Sounds like beautiful views if you have your windows facing the right way.
Yeah, it really is. As far as the cycling culture goes, there really isn't much of one here just for that reason. There's a handful of women that have road bikes that will ride from town up to Red Canyon or up to Bryce Canyon 2 or 3 times a week in the summertime. We have a high school mountain bike team. Mainly mountain biking in the mountains is, I don't know if you've ever done it before, but it really gives a new perspective on trail riding.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Not just with elevation gain, but the different sceneries that you see. As you're climbing up mountain bike trails, you'll go from rocks to different colored layers of rocks, and then you'll get back into the green, into the trees and the biodomes, I guess is maybe what they're called.
Oh yeah. If you get to look around, because when I'm mountain biking, I'm staring at the ground the whole time because I'm just like holding on for dear life.
Yep. No kidding, right? Holding on for dear, or you're climbing a hill and you've got your eyes closed because you're struggling so hard so that you can keep going. shoulders hunched up around your ears, climbing as hard as you can.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're not, you don't have the accessibility for, a big bike group that does weekly rides, or, I think you even mentioned before we started recording that a bike shop is many, many miles away. So it's not like you can just walk out your door and have a group of cyclists to bike with.
That is correct. Yeah, it's about 45 miles one way to the closest bike shop.
Oh, wow.
And when you take your bike in to get fixed and you go pick it up and you bring it home and you ride it, only to have to take it back, that gets to be
right.
But they do group rides, but it's just too far for me to go do on a regular basis. That is one of my goals, is to go participate in those, because I have become pretty good friends with the team that works down there. And maybe next year I'll get a chance to get down there once or twice.
Yeah, good. Well, if you're okay with it, I'd love to hear the story of how you came to be a paracyclist. And I've read about it, and I've also, heard you talk about it, but it's just it's a super inspiring story to me. I'm not sure if you think of it that way, but do you want to tell us about what happened back in the day?
Yeah, so I'm a T12 paraplegic. I've got a spinal cord injury, and that basically means from about the belly button level down, I've got no feeling, or things don't work correctly. Might be a better way to put it. I've got no mind to muscle connections, so hamstrings, glutes, hips, hip flexors, things like that. They just there's no connection there. So the muscles don't grow or don't maintain themselves. Back on February 24th of 2008, I used to ride motocross. I did that most of my life, even as a young kid. And as I got older, I forgot that my body gets older than my mind does. And we went to a race, and I hit some equipment malfunctions on a big double jump right out of the starting gate of a motocross race, and I lost control of the motorcycle, and I lost focus. Tried to correct my mistake, but everything happened so fast. I had hit the ground before I realized really what was going on, and I landed sitting on the back tire of the motorcycle from about 40 feet up in the air, and that compression just broke 3 vertebrae and literally severed my spinal cord. I immediately lost feeling. And there I laid there for about 3 hours before the life flight helicopter came to get me, and a lot of that had to do with the location of the motocross track, and then weather played a big factor in it. There was a lot of strong winds at the time. And they just couldn't get there, and the ambulance couldn't leave because of the event that was going on, or at least that's what they told me. We got to the hospital. My wife and I, we got flown into the UMC hospital in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we had the surgery, and that's, I don't think I realized what had happened or how severe the accident was. I knew I couldn't feel things. I knew every time they'd sit me up, I'd pass out, but I wasn't comprehending what had happened. And they told my wife that my life was going to be different forever, and they were more concerned about her.
Oh, sure.
And how her life was going to have to change, because she was going to have to take care of me. I would never walk again, and I would need help getting cleaned up. I would need help in the bathtub. I would need help with putting my socks and shoes on in the morning, because I wouldn't be able to bend down to even do that.
And I've only talked to you for a few minutes now, but I'm going to guess that did not sit well with you. It
didn't. We got into therapy about a week and a half after the surgery, and I got moved to an inpatient rehab hospital. I had a really good therapist there. Him and I got along really well, and he was super interested in how he could help spinal cord injury recovery. So he taught me a few things, but it was still all teaching me how to live out of the wheelchair, how to do things. Within a couple of weeks, I was able to bend down and tie my shoes, and then pull myself back up, or figure out how to use my hands to push myself back up when I was sitting down. They taught me how to cook from a wheelchair. They said, you got to hang a mirror above the stove so that when you're boiling water, you can look up into the mirror and down into the pot rather than pulling yourself up, risking dumping that pot of water on you because you won't feel it. So we did that. I did that for about 6 weeks, and then it was time to go home. And my gosh, was I excited to go home. I still don't think I comprehended what was going on because I don't know if it was the combination of the drugs and my therapist being such a positive person, but I still really didn't know. We got out into the car. They taught my wife and I how to get me in and out of the vehicle. We got home. My wife helped me get out of the wheelchair into the wheelchair. I turned it around to go into the garage door, into the house through the garage door. And I think that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I can't even get up into my house because of, the step up from the garage floor. It was about an 8-inch step up into the house.
So the comfort of home, but completely different,
right.
different perspective.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I think my wife saw it or felt it because she immediately grabbed the wheelchair and turned it around and says, the neighbor built a ramp for you at the front door. My eyes I'm going to start crying thinking about it. She pushed me out and we went in through the front door, and it really struck me at that point that they were right. I was no longer the same person that I used to be. I couldn't do anything I used to be able to do.
Wow.
I couldn't bend down to pick the dog up to pet it. I couldn't take out the garbage. I couldn't get a glass of water. I couldn't mow the grass. I couldn't, there was nothing that I was going to be able to do that I used to be able to do. I couldn't help. I couldn't provide for my wife because I'd been out of work for 6 weeks. And what was I going to do sitting in a wheelchair? Who was going to hire me doing what I used to be able to, or what I used to do?
Right. And
I told her, I said, I just want to go to the bedroom. And she started to push me, and I stopped her. And I'm sure I wasn't very nice about it, but I think she understood. So I pushed my wheelchair into the bedroom, and I just wanted to lay down. Actually, before that, when I first told her I wanted to go to the bedroom, I told her, I said, no, I don't want to go to bed. Take me back to the hospital.
Oh, no.
I wanted to go back to where I was comfortable.
Yeah, right.
Being at home, that was actually frightening at that point. Anyway, so we got to the bedroom, and I realized our bed was too high. She realized our bed was too high. I couldn't even get into the same bed that I used to sleep in. So we blew up an air mattress right next to the bed, and I slept on that. She slept in the regular bed. I laid in that bed for 3 days, crying, upset. I couldn't go to the bathroom. There's just nothing that I could do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the third day, I'll never forget that third day after being home, and I don't know the exact date of it, but that third day of being home, laying in that bed, I was seriously bored. I was tired of laying there crying. I was tired of just laying there doing nothing. And it was then that I realized, if something's going to happen, I'm going to have to be the one to make it happen.
Oh,
I now know the severity of my injury. I now know that my life is never going to be the way that it used to be. But if I want to try and make things close to the way they used to be, I'm going to have to work really hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started researching spinal cord injuries on my own. I was going to outpatient therapy at the same time with the same therapist that I had during the inpatient therapy that I was doing.
And at that point, was therapy more about you being comfortable in a wheelchair, or was there ever a time way back in those early days where you were like, I'm going to walk again? That's a really really good question. Mm-hmm. Because when I first started going to outpatient therapy, I still had that mentality. It was just to maintain. I was trying to read things on the internet about spinal cord injury recovery, but everything that I was reading was just saying what the doctors were saying. You broke your back, you can't feel your legs, you're never going to walk. Oh, wow.
We could strap you to a robotic machine so you could get the sensation of walking again, but that's really all that's available for you. So I wasn't learning a lot, but after 2 or 3 trips in the van down to the down to the therapist, I got to talking to him about it. I was like, there's got to be something. There's got to be ways to do this. And he would help stand me up, holding on to me. So I go from sitting position to standing up, holding on to him. And just after a short period of time, 1 or 2 sessions, we would start trying to take steps. You know, he would walk backwards, and I would try and keep up with him. That started getting my wheels turning in my head. And I says, well, gosh, if I can do this, maybe I can do things on my own as well to try and get stronger. So I come up with this idea to push a table, to lean, stand up leaning against the table and see if I could push it. So I built a steel table in my garage, and I welded wheels to the bottom of it. And I had the neighbors come over and flip it over. And sure enough, I could stand at that table and I could push it across the garage floor. And then I would just shuffle around to the other side, and I would just push this table back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And how were you able to move your legs if you didn't have feeling? Was it just the motion of gravity moving them?
Well, I knew what they were supposed to do. I had to watch. I had to look down.
Okay, sure.
Like in my brain, I had to say, okay, we're going to move the left foot forward, and so I would, because I couldn't move the left leg forward, I would throw the hip. I kind of lean over,
okay.
Lean up against the table. I'd lean to the right, just kind of flop that leg forward, and I would do that both ways. Therapist didn't like the idea at all. Hyperextension of the knees. You're going to burn out your knees, and in just a matter of months, and then you're going to have bad knees on top of everything else. But I wanted to walk.
Right,
I wanted to be able to do things. That table was a defining moment in my recovery. As it got easier to push the table, I would start practicing on my gait pattern. Now I wasn't looking to see where my legs were. I was just assuming they were going in the right place. And just through repetition, I can't say that the mind to muscle connection was made, but the mind was telling the muscle what to do. Wow. And it was doing it. And it does. 15 years later, it doesn't look pretty when I walk, but I can do it. As the table got easier, I would add weight to it. I would pile Rubbermaid containers with Christmas decorations on it, so it got heavier. Just to keep building that strength. And from that, I progressed into a treadmill. I fell down a few times, obviously, but I just get back up and try again. And what this did for me mentally was it allowed me to realize that I could get up out of the wheelchair. I could get up and get a glass of water.
Yeah.
I could stand at the sink and turn the faucet on. I could pull the garbage out of the garbage can and tie a knot in it and set it on my lap and roll it outside. But that was as far as I thought I could go. That was, I did that for years. I don't know, 10, 11 years. I guess that's the journey up to shortly up to when I started. I think I kind of got back into a little bit of a depression or depressive state.
Where you're probably like trying to think of what's next, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're like pushing a table across the garage, and having those increases in mobility are probably, I mean, that had to have been life-changing in itself. But then at some point you're like, I want to ride a bicycle? Like seems like a pretty big stretch, but yet here we are.
Yeah. I got into this depressive state, and I didn't think I was going to be able to go any further than where I was at. Mm-hmm. I wanted so bad to be normal. I didn't want to be the one that everybody looked at funny or felt like they had to hold the door for, or, I didn't want to be different than anybody else walking through the grocery store. That was always my main focus this entire time since my injury. I tried several things. I raised purebred cattle after my injury, just to see if I could do it. Mm-hmm. I drove a semi truck. I went and got a CDL. I don't know why they even gave one to me, but I took the test and I passed. I got a CDL and I drove an 80,000 pound semi truck across the country back and forth for a year.
Wow.
And I did all these things thinking that it made me feel normal, but in reality, all it was really doing was I was concealing the fact that I was paralyzed to myself, or concealing it to myself, I guess, basically, hiding the fact that I was paralyzed. But none of these things were satisfying to me. They were extremely difficult to do. I mean, they're difficult for anybody to do, much less somebody who's paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And so I would burn out simply from fatigue. And I wish I could tell you the day that I wanted to try ride a bike, but I really don't remember how exactly it came into my head. But my wife and I were up in Salt Lake City. We were at a little restaurant eating dinner, and I looked up at her and says, "You know what? I wonder if I can ride a bike."
I cannot imagine what her face looked like looking back at you.
Well, first thing she said was, "No, of course you can't ride a bike." Like, well, yeah, you're probably right, but I sure like to try. So what do you think? I mean, how do you think we can make this happen? And we were just talking at the table at that restaurant, and I says, "What about? I've been seeing these commercials for Nordic Trek for an exercise bike. I mean, that's stable. It's on a platform. We get one of these, and I can see if I can sit on it. If I can sit on it, we can see if I can pedal it." So she agreed.
Like a stationary bike that stays inside? Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Just an exercise bike with iFit. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going to have to look at the wall when if I could do this. I was actually going to have people motivating me to ride my bike, help me teach me how to ride the bike, mm-hmm. just through these classes. And sure enough, we got it home, put it together in the bedroom, and realized it was supposed to go upstairs. Oh, crap. Now what do we do? So I had to call the neighbors. Neighbors hauled it upstairs. You know what? I forgot that step. I would push the table, but we live in a house that has stairs, a 2-story house. So I would hang onto the railing and walk up and down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew I could get upstairs, just, but it was all arms, arms hanging onto the railing, pulling myself. But mm-hmm. at the same time, there had to have been some hamstring movement there, because no matter how hard you pull yourself, you've got to push through your legs to get up a step. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that was one of my therapies that I was doing. So we got the bike, we got it upstairs, and then I couldn't figure out how I was going to get my leg over it. So my wife would go up with me, and she would help me get my leg over the chair. I would stand on the pedals, and I could sit on the seat and push on the pedals. I could spin circles, and I did that. The first day is when I realized how good that made me feel to be able to do something on my own like that.
Right. And physically, could you feel your feet on the pedals?
No, I still can't.
So it's just that kind of like when you learn to walk, how you look at your feet. Yeah. You did the same thing with biking, where you started out by watching. Oh, I'm so
Yep.
Impressed.
I started simply by watching my legs. I would tell, my brain would say, push down with your left foot. And there were times where I had to put my hand on my left knee and physically push my leg to get the momentum going. But once the momentum was going, now it's just repetition at that point. It's just, as long as I can keep that thing moving, my legs are spinning. And I would start, and then the exercise, the sweat.
Right.
It made me feel so good. I did that a whole bunch. I found a trainer that I just absolutely fell in love with. I loved how he connected with me through these classes that he had made. He's actually a Hall of Fame gravel cyclist now, Yuri Oswald. And he kept talking about social media. Hey, send me a message. Tell me how my videos are helping you. And I didn't have social media. And I want to go back. All this happened in the fall of 2022. Okay. So I went from
super recent.
Yeah. So I went from an accident in 2008 to not getting on a bike until the fall of 2022.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I created a social media account, and I connected with Yuri, and it's just one day I got tired of riding the bike in the house. The sun was shining. I was looking out the window. I said, I want to try riding the bike outside. And I borrowed one from a friend, and the wife and I loaded it up. We moved it down to a lower elevation where there was no snow. And I got on the bike and I fell over. I got on the bike and I fell over. I got on the bike and I fell over. I'd get on the bike and I'd be leaning against our pickup truck, and I'd get my feet placed on the pedals because again, I can't feel. So I have to be able to physically watch where my feet are going. I have to grab my leg and turn it so that my foot is pointing straight, and set everything down on the pedals. And I would try and start pedaling, I'd fall over.
I was going to say, you have to be leaning against the truck and balancing yourself, and then you've got to get enough momentum to start pedaling. I think that would be, well, you'll tell me if it was impossible or not.
Well, I thought it was.
Yeah.
I just, at one point I says, you know what, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to go back to the bike in the house. It made me feel good. This makes me feel like shit. I don't want to do it. But there was one time that, I'm going to try it one more time. And I learned that, you can actually put your feet on the pedals and actually get going. I mean, you can start pedaling from a dead stop if you really want to. And my God, I was riding a bike.
Wow.
I think I made about 30 feet, and and I wanted to. I didn't know the terrains, and I'd been on an exercise bike in the house, so the road was going up and down. I was on a gravel road, and I was hitting rocks, and things were bouncing around, and I fell over. But I felt accomplished at that point in time. I knew that I'd be able to ride a bike outside.
I cannot imagine that feeling of that very first, even if it was only 30 feet, just to you're doing it. Like, wow.
I did it. Exactly. I can do this. So we loaded up the bike. We took it home. I gave it back to my friend. I got back on the exercise bike and waited for spring. And I bought a bike. And I would practice in our driveway. We've got a porch railing that goes all around our house, and I would lean against that porch railing, and I would just practice taking off and stopping. I would take off and I'd ride to the end of the driveway, and I'd come back, and I would try, and I would stop. I'd stop the same way, feet on the pedals, stop the bike, and fall into the railing. And then I'd have to get off the bike and I'd turn it around, and I just kept doing that over and over and over. And I just kept teaching my things, Murph. I just kept teaching myself how to do things. It grew to where I could ride around the block. It grew to where with a dropper post on the bike, I was able to get the coordination where as I was coming to a stop, I'd drop the seat on the bike.
Oh, so you'd be lower?
So I'd be lower, and my foot could touch the ground. And I would do this next to the handrail so I wouldn't fall, because I'm so sick and tired of falling over. But I would try and stop and plant that foot at the exact same time. And I actually got pretty good at it. And just like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Next thing you know, I was riding 5 miles, and then 10 miles, and then 15 miles, and then the dopamine fix was crazy.
I was gonna say that
I was so happy.
It had to have been so exciting every single time.
Yeah, it was. And you could ask the people around me. I was easier to get along with. I wasn't always defensive. I wasn't always saying things that probably didn't need to be said. It was making me a better person mentally and physically.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you look at the bike, at least you probably have multiple bikes now, but besides the dropper post, did you have to adapt anything on those bikes, or were you just like, I'm gonna practice and practice and practice until I can ride a bike, no matter what bike it is? Yep,
that's exactly what it was. I wanted my goal was at that point, I was going to be a paraplegic cyclist, which to me, And there's nothing wrong with being paralyzed in a hand cycle. I think that's 100% inspiring. But for me, I wanted to ride a upright acoustic bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't adapt anything. I just learned how to use or how to adapt myself to the existing equipment. For instance, I was talking about my feet. I found a pair of shoes that worked really well for me. I could walk in them and I could cycle them, and I found a set of pedals that worked really, really well for me. It's a flat pedal with a, what you call it, a cleat, a clip.
So you lock your feet into the pedal.
On my right side, I do. My right side is my weak leg. So like if I stand and I pick my leg up, I stand on my crutches and I pick my leg up, my heel turns in and my toe turns out.
Oh.
That's the same thing when I'm riding a bike, because you're not constantly, you don't have 100% pressure on those pedals all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There again, because terrain changes and speeds change, and sometimes you need to rest. So I do clip in on the right side, but I leave the left side unclipped.
Mm-hmm.
This combination works really, really well for me. Now, if I fall to the right side, I've got nothing stopping me, and I have fallen to the right side. It damages the derailleur on the bike as much as it hurts me.
And I think
always try and fall to the left.
And I think everyone who clips into their pedals can say a similar story, but it's probably a little bit different for you. But I was just like, yeah, I've done that too, especially with plenty of people watching me. But yeah.
Yep.
So we have to. So here you are going from, indoor bicycle, stationary bicycle, to now you bike outside. How did you get from that to Rebecca's private Idaho gravel race?
Okay.
I am this is probably one of the reasons that you're on this podcast, is because I'm so obsessed isn't the right word, but I really, really want to do Rebecca's private Idaho some year. And I wanted to find out your perspective on it.
Right. Well, I hope after this you become obsessed with Rebecca's private
Okay.
Idaho, because everybody needs to be obsessed with Rebecca's private Idaho. What an unbelievable experience. I told you, well, with IFIT, I had met Yuri Oswald just through communicating on social media. Well, again, I can't tell you exactly what led up to it. One day I come to work and I turned on my computer and I opened up my emails, and there was an email that Yuri had sent to Rebecca Rush,
Mm-hmm.
Mike Mack, Mike McCormick with the Breck Epic stage races, the Rebecca's private Idaho team, and introducing me to them.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even know who these people. Well, I knew who Mike Mack was for some reason, but I didn't know who these other people were right away. But I knew it was an event, and I was super excited because that was really what I was kind of trying to build up to, and I had been telling Yuri this, but I didn't really think that I would be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he introduced me to him, and we set up a meeting, a Google Meet meeting, and they invited me to Rebecca's private Idaho.
Wow.
And to prepare for Rebecca's private Idaho, just riding around the block wasn't going to be sufficient. So I says, well, let me see what other races are close by to me. I signed up for Crusher in the Tusher in Beaver, Utah. And if any other gravel cyclists are listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like a 70-mile race with almost 11,000 feet of elevation gain. But kind
Wait,
of
so
like
this
my
is
accident.
this is your first race? Come on, Jeremy.
Yeah. Well,
Go
kinda
big
like
Yeah.
go big or go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of like the accident, though. When I was in the hospital, I knew, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
All I knew was it didn't dawn on me, Crusher in the Tusher. Why they call it the Crusher. It didn't. All I knew was it was 30 minutes from my front door. So I was like, hey, this will be convenient. I'll just go practice on this gravel road. Yeah, no. So I trained for that, and I went to that. It was a horrible experience all the way around, just from preparation to getting there. I was nervous. I was alone. I was scared. I made about 3.5 miles. I didn't get out of town, and I turned around and went home. Actually, I didn't go home. I mean, I turned around at the end of the race, and it wound up being a good learning experience for me. I did get to go sit at the finish line and cheer on the pros and everybody else that was able to climb like 10,500 feet or something like that, 70 miles. I know, it's insane, isn't it?
Wow.
Now, through Rebecca's Private Idaho, back to that. For those that don't know, Rebecca's Private Idaho really is, it's a 4-day stage race, a 4-day all-inclusive gravel experience that has a big main event on the last day. In that stage race, Rebecca Rush is known as the Queen of Pain, so they call it the Queen Stage Race. It's got technical single track, it's got double track, it's got casual riding, it's got timed hill climbing, it's got like a fun ride. It just has. I mean, there's even a parade in the town while the race is going on. I mean, it is so much fun.
Rebecca Rush, like you said, she's known as the Queen of Pain, but she's also known as the Queen of Stoke. So you mix like super high energy cheerleader with, I'm going to give you some of the toughest terrain that you can think of. Like that defines Rebecca Rush and Rebecca's Private Idaho. So I would love to hear your, how you did. Did you do it?
Right. So, yes.
Wow.
When I first signed up again, it was kind of like I had just signed up for the Crusher and the Tusher, and I was telling these RPI people, yeah, I'm going to do the Crusher and the Tusher to train for Rebecca's Private Idaho. Sign me up for the 103-mile race. That's the one I'm going to do. I'm going to knock it out of the park. I can ride my exercise bike, so I can do that. After the Crusher and the Tusher, I realized, yeah, Jeremy, you're probably not going to do a 103-mile race. So I talked to him, or we communicated via email for a while, and wound up settling on the 53-mile race, which still had almost 4,400 feet of elevation, if I remember right.
It is no joke.
Yeah. And I want to say it was like 1,600 or 1,700 feet in the first 12 miles of the race.
Wow.
I mean, so you start going uphill and you do most of your climbing right off the bat. Yeah, I did a lot of things that led up to this. I got to experience the base camp training. So I got to train for 8 weeks with other people that were going to be now kind of maybe a virtual training type thing, but I had a coach that I could talk to. They set up a Training Peaks account for me. So I kind of got to learn how to train for a bike race, which I think really, really helped. Actually, I know it really helped me. That experience of learning how to ride a bike, being able to talk to other riders or other racers, to have the coaches there to answer questions for me was an integral part of the RPI experience. So it comes up to the day to go. I'm super excited. We load up, we drive up to southern Idaho, and first thing we do is we go to a big fundraiser for Rebecca's foundation, the Be Good Foundation. And I got to meet all these people finally.
Wow. Even the iFit guy?
Yuri Oswald was there.
Oh.
He was there. Rebecca was there. Mike McCormick was there. So many people that I had learned over the course of these few months that had been my mentors. I got to meet them and hug them and shake their hands and talk to them. I was a little starstruck, to be honest with you. So we did that. The next day was the I don't know what you call it, shakeout ride, shakeout ride.
Yeah.
And but part of the deal with me with Rebecca's Private Idaho was I wanted to have a support rider with me, because if I did get stopped, I was probably going to need help to get restarted, especially going uphill like we were going to be doing. So rather than me participating in that shakeout ride, I got together with the support riders that Rebecca's Private Idaho had supplied for me. There were 3 of them, so that was awesome. I had 3 people there to push me along and to be a part of this with me. We all kind of worked together to learn what maybe they could do to help. They were able to see how I was able to get going, how I stopped, how I rode my bike, and to give them an opportunity to think about for that day until the next morning when we did the race. Next morning we woke up, we went to the race. such a positive feeling. It was nothing like I had felt at the Crusher and the Tusher when I was kind of felt like I was alone. And I was alone because I wanted to be, you know, I didn't want people looking at me different. But at Rebecca's Private Idaho, I had now learned that being a paraplegic wasn't really a bad thing. I could actually use this to my advantage to become a better person. So when that race morning came, I was so positive. I was so excited to get this thing going. I was full of energy. I was ready to tackle it. And never once, well, about 6 hours into it is when I think I told my support riders, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm done. You guys keep going. But they sat there with me and we just talked and we had a good time and we shared stories enough to where I was able to recover, and we got back on the bike.
I kept going?
The race.
Yeah.
I finished Rebecca's Private Idaho.
Congratulations.
According to my bike computer, I did 57 miles. I climbed over 4,000 feet. It took me almost 9.5 hours. And out of that, according to the computer, I pedaled, or I was in motion for 7.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy, isn't it? But I finished. I crossed the mat when we took off, and they left the mat down for me. I was able to cross the mat at the finish line. And I mean, they were so done that the benders had packed up, everything was gone, but they left the mat, they left the arch up for me, and you'll never guess who was there waiting for me. When I crossed, Rebecca Rush was there. I don't know that she waited for me, but I'm going to tell myself that the day I die, she was there for me.
It gives me the goosebumps regardless of if she was there for you or not, but that's amazing.
Yeah, she was there for me. So yeah, so to this day, I'm paralyzed from my waist down. I walk with crutches. I walk with braces on my feet so that my toes don't drag when I do pick up my legs to walk. If I stop and stand and you were to take my sticks away from me, I will fall over. I cannot stand without my crutches. I've got no feeling, no strength there. I can't explain it. I love riding a bike and I can do it. And I can't wait to do it again and again and again and again and again.
Wow. Yeah. The freedom that, I can just feel it in your attitude, the freedom that it gives you. That's
it really
amazing.
Does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll go back and do RPI again?
I guarantee it.
Wow.
I'm already signed up.
Oh my gosh. Maybe I'll have to sign up so I can meet you in real life.
Yeah. I've got some pretty cool things coming up here in 2024. One is RPI. I do plan on doing that again, but before that, I am going to do a bike packing trip in southern Nevada. Again, paraplegic. I'm going to go bike packing for, I don't know if it's going to be 2 days or 3 days yet, but I'm going to go bike packing through the southern mountains or southern Nevada mountains as a fundraiser. I've talked to the Be Good Foundation, and they're going to support me and help me with it. And I'm going to try and raise enough money to get two para athletes to Rebecca's Private Idaho in 2024.
Oh, that's amazing.
And not just cover that race, but I'm going to try and raise enough money to all inclusive. I want to cover travel. I want to cover their room. I want to cover the base camp training. I want to cover that, that main event race for them. I don't want them to have to worry. I just want them to be able to go and ride their bike and experience what I was able to experience.
Right.
Feel what I felt.
And I know RPI, at least at the time of this recording, is quite a few months away into next year.
Yep.
But do you already have either a landing page or a social media site about that information, or should we look to that in the future?
Yep, I don't have anything yet for the fundraiser. No, that will be coming. Kind of got to get just something recent within the last month. I've started working on.
Yeah.
And and with Thanksgiving coming up and such, it's kind of hard to get everybody locked in. People traveling, but that should be up soon. I do have. As we talked about the social media, I document every single step of this journey on Instagram, and it's a very simple name. It's Para-Cyclist is my handle there. And I also have a blog website called same thing, www.paragravelcyclist.com, where I will have a lot of information about the fundraiser as it becomes available.
Good. Isn't it cool that you actually can call yourself a gravel paracyclist? Like,
yeah, that's. And it's kind of like you said at the beginning, that can be taken in so many different ways. A para-athlete, a paracyclist might be somebody who is missing an arm or has other issues.
mm-hmm.
I'm paralyzed from the waist down, riding an acoustic, human-powered upright bike.
Wow.
Just to see if I could do it.
Yeah, and you did. You continue to. That's just awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, I am beyond thankful that you took the time to come on the podcast and talk about your journey and where you're going with it. And now to know that you're going to try and support other paracyclists for future events, like it's all really, really cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That kind of stuff keeps me motivated. Those are the things that keep me going, keep me wanting to ride the bike. It does make me feel good, both mentally and physically.
Right.
It's been really good for me. But setting these kind of goals, seeing the progress in myself, they're great motivators to continue riding a bike. The mentors I have, I was telling you about Yuri and Rebecca and Mike and Rebecca's Private Idaho and the Be Good Foundation and you and other people that are interested.
Mm-hmm.
I follow all of you closely and I share these accomplishments but I also share the times where I feel like I might have flatlined. And I do that. I lay that vulnerability out there because it gives somebody else an opportunity to help me, and then in turn they feel good. And it just keeps progressing from that. Now they've helped me get out of my little funk,
mm-hmm.
and I'm back where I was.
I love it.
Yeah.
And like you said, your Instagram page is Para-Cyclist, and then if you go to Jeremy's Instagram page, if you look at the link in the bio, that will take you to the blog and, all kinds of just fun stuff about what you do. So, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And I look forward to hopefully meeting you at RPI next year, right?
That's right. You better be there.
All right. It's been said on the podcast. I guess I have to go now. But
no, you have to go. That's right.
All right.
If I'm going to go to RAGBRAI, you have to go to RPI.
Okay. Deal. All right. Thanks. Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.